TV7 Israel News is made possible thanks to your generous donations. Shalom, good evening. This is TV7 Israel News broadcast to you from Jerusalem, and in today's top stories. Jerusalem calls upon Washington not to sign a partial nuclear agreement with Iran. Israel has signed a defense cooperation pact with Morocco, significantly bolstering the security relations between the two countries. In a first exclusive interview granted to TV7 since stepping out of the shadows after formerly serving as the commander of the Israeli Naval Commando's Shayetet 13, IDF Naval Operations Head Rear Admiral RADM Hagari stresses the need to confront Iranian terror by force. Jerusalem calls upon Washington not to sign a partial nuclear agreement with Iran. Speaking to the Wall Street Journal, Israeli officials warned that any such agreement would grant the new government of the Ayatollah regime a gift which Jerusalem fears would alleviate the robust economic pressure that is currently imposed on Tehran in exchange for either suspending or even partially shutting down their nuclear activities. However, per the report, U.S. officials sought to alleviate Israeli concerns by characterizing the deliberations regarding a less-for-less deal as merely brainstorming amid intensified discussions between U.S. diplomats together with their European allies and Middle Eastern partners regarding how to deal with the Islamic Republic's rapidly advancing nuclear program. It is important to know that the presiding assessment in Jerusalem remains that the imminent resumption of nuclear talks in Vienna, scheduled to begin on November the 29th, will reach an inevitable impasse and will not endure for more than a number of days. Nevertheless, senior defense establishment officials are evidently skeptical about the Biden administration's political will to take military action against the Ayatollah regime in the event that the nuclear talks will fail. In contrast, the Israel Defense Forces have seemingly accelerated preparations to deal with the Islamic Republic to guarantee that upon a decision made by the top political brass in Jerusalem, the IDF will have the necessary updated plan and tools to follow through on its execution. Addressing a change of command ceremony for the IDF's Technology and Logistics Directorate, Chief of General Staff Lieutenant General Aviv Kochavi asserted the Israeli military's awareness and efforts on the necessity to remain vigilant to changing realities on the ground that demand incessant preparedness and a dynamic operational nature.
צה"ל מתמודד עם 6 זירות, ובכל אחת מהן עליו להגן ולהתכונן להכרעה באופן אפקטיבי. המציאות המשתנה מחייבת אותנו לשמר מוכנות גבוהה ובה בעת להתחדש. האויב השתנה, מרחבי הלחימה השתנו, וצה"ל חייב להשתנות גם הוא. אנו נדרשים להתחדש ולהתאים את עצמנו לאתגרי ההווה והעתיד. מוכנות והשתנות הם הדופק הארגוני של צה"ל, ועל פיו נדרשים לפעול כל יחידה, פיקוד, אגף או זרוע.
Meanwhile, Israeli Defense Minister Benny Gantz emphasized the importance for global action against Iran, reiterating that it is not just a challenge for Israel, rather, it is first and foremost a global and regional challenge. Jerusalem's top defense official who asserted these remarks in a special op-ed to the Moroccan daily L'Observateur de Maroc further highlighted the importance of Israel's relations with parties to the Abraham Accords, which provides for new opportunities of collaboration on numerous sectors of mutual interest, including in the spheres of security and intelligence. The published opinion piece was published this morning as Defense Minister Gantz concluded a first historic 2-day trip to Morocco. During his visit, Israel's top defense official held a working meeting with his Moroccan counterpart, Abdelatif Laoudi, at the culmination of which a memorandum of understanding was signed to bolster defense ties between Rabat and Jerusalem.
חתמנו עכשיו על הסכם מסגרת לשיתוף פעולה ביטחוני בכל המובנים עם מדינת מרוקו. דבר מאוד מאוד משמעותי, הוא יאפשר לנו גם להחליף דעות, הוא יאפשר לנו גם להיכנס לפרויקטים משותפים, הוא יאפשר ייצוא ישראלי לכאן. בכלל, אני חושב שהיחסים בין מרוקו וישראל צריכים להמשיך ולהתהדק, להמשיך ולהתפתח ולהתרחב, ואני שמח שיש לנו חלק בעניין הזה.
It is worth mentioning that during the meeting, Gantz and Laudi were set to discuss security challenges across the Middle East and North Africa, and especially challenges which both countries face from fundamentalistic terror. Meanwhile, in a first exclusive interview granted since stepping out of the shadows after formally serving as the commander of the Israeli Navy's Commandos, Shayetet 13, IDF Naval Operation Head, Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari told TV7's editor-at-large, Amir Oren, during a soon-to-be broadcast episode of TV7 Watchmen Talk, that while every country which establishes normalization accords with Israel maintains its own national interests, it is vital to identify emerging interests which enable proactive collaborations.
Even when you get a peace treaty together, every country has its own interests, especially in the Middle East. And I think we should leave it to every country has its own interests, but we should look for the mutual interests that we can agree upon.
At a time when reports of Israel engaging in a so-called shadow war against the Islamic Republic of Iran throughout the region and beyond, Admiral Hagari was asked to what degree those alleged operations were in effect effective, and whether Israel should continue to engage the various tentacles of the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps in covert commando operations, including, most notably, in the maritime domain.
I think we should prevent the Iranians to do terror, aggression at sea, as we saw at the Mercer Street. This is an act of terror aggression against innocent civilians, and we also saw it conducted in Aramco in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia in 2019, and it's done by the same method, the method of UAS systems conducted from Iranian soil or from Iranian entrenchment in the area.
Admiral Hagari also asserted that the Iranian strike by unmanned aerial systems, or UAS, constitutes a global threat rather than exclusively an Israeli challenge, further stressing that Iranian strikes on maritime shipping or Saudi oil installations cannot be merely tackled by UN resolutions.
The Mercer Street is a global problem. It's not an Israeli problem. The Mercer Street is not an Israeli invention.
It was registered in London.
The Mercer Street shows the problem that even if you go to the UN or to when you get a resolution in the UN, it's not enough. Like Aramco, aggression should be stopped in this area, in force measures.
TV7 will broadcast the first of Watchmen Talk's two-part conversation between Amir Oren and Admiral Daniel Hagari on December 4th. Turning to Saudi Arabia, where defense ministers of the Gulf Cooperation Council member states met in the kingdom's capital, Riyadh, with a declared aim of strengthening common defense and joint military actions. This was the first offline meeting of defense ministers from all of the 6 member states since the Gulf crisis with Qatar emerged. The multilateral security meeting also took place at a time when Iran's proxy in Yemen, the Houthi militia, has stepped up cross-border attacks against Saudi Arabia. Dozens of unmanned aerial systems strapped with explosives were launched toward the kingdom's Aramco oil installations and international airports earlier this week, in combined attacks which the Houthis claim to be a response to the Saudi-led coalition's military support of the internationally recognized government of Yemen. And while the Houthi spokesman boasted over the attack, including the usage of Iranian-made weaponry, he further threatened that additional attacks against Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates were possible.
استهداف قاعدة الملك خالد في الرياض ب4 طائرات مسيرة نوع صماد 3. قصف أهداف عسكرية في مطار الملك عبد الله الدولي بجدة. واستهداف مصافي أرامكو جدة ب4 طائرات مسيرة نوع صماد 2. قصف هدف عسكري مهم بمطار أبها الدولي بطائرة صماد 3. قصف أهداف عسكرية مختلفة في مناطق أبها وجيزان ونجران ب5 طائرات مسيرة بلغ عدد الطائرات المسيرة المشاركة في العملية 14 طائرة. إن القوات المسلحة تؤكد قدرتها على تنفيذ المزيد من العمليات الهجومية ضد العدو السعودي والإماراتي في إطار الدفاع المشروع عن الشعب والوطن.
Despite these boastful claims of success, Saudi Arabia's aerial defense array reportedly managed to intercept most of the incoming projectiles, and the Saudi-led coalition has continued to confront the Iranian-backed Houthis that are engaged in an offensive against the Yemeni city of Marib. Thank you for watching us. As part of TV7 Israel's prayer initiative, I would like to encourage you today to join the team and me here in Jerusalem to lift up the United Arab Emirates in prayer for its salvation and peace, alongside prayers for our persecuted brothers and sisters worldwide, in addition to our ongoing prayers for the peace of Jerusalem and the salvation of Israel. I'm Jonathan Hassan, wishing you a Erev Tov U'Mevorach, and we will see you again tomorrow at the same time.